Hello. Hello. Today is the 18th day of 30 days reading challenge. I am reading The Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, page number 246. Then I remember, I maintain in my article that all well legislators and leaders of men, such as like Crocus, Solon, Mahomet, Napoleon, and so on, were all without exception criminals. From the very fact that making a new law, they transgressed the ancient one, handed down from their ancestors and held sacred by the people. And they did not stop short at bloodshed either. If that bloodshed often of innocent persons fighting bravery in defense of ancient law were of use of their cause. It's remarkable, in fact, that the majority indeed of these benefactors and leaders of humanity and guilt were guilty of terrible carnage. In short, I maintain that all great men, or even men a little out of the common, that is to say, capable of giving some new word, must from their very nature be criminal, more or less, of course. Otherwise, it's hard for them to get out of the common rut, and to remain in the common rut is what they can't submit to. From their very nature again, and to my mind, they ought not indeed to submit to it. You see that there is nothing particularly new in all that. The same thing has been printed and read 1,000 times before. As for my division of people into ordinary and extraordinary, I acknowledge that it's somewhat arbitrary, but I does not insist upon exact numbers. I only believe in my leading ideas that men are in general divided by a law of nature in two categories: inferior, ordinary, that is, so to say, material that serves only to reproduce its kind, and the men who have the gift or the talent to utter a new word. There are, of course, innumerable subdivisions, but the distinguishing features of both categories are fairly well marked. The first category, generally speaking, for a man conservative in, in temperament and law abiding. They live under control and love to be controlled. To my thinking, it is their duty to be controlled because that's their vocations, and there is nothing humiliating in it for them. The second category all transgress the law. They are destroyers or disposed to destructions according to their capacities. The crime of these men are of course relative and varied. For the most part, they seek in very varied ways the destruction, the destruction of the present for the sake of the better. But if such a one is forced for the sake of his idea to step over a corpse or wade through blood, he can, I maintain, find within himself, in his consciousness, a sanction for wading through blood. That depends on the idea and its dimensions. Note, it's only in that sense I speak of their right to crime in my article. You remember it began with the legal question. There is no need for such anxiety, however. The masses will scarcely ever admit this right. They punish them or hang them, more or less, and in doing so fulfill quite justly their conservative vocations. But the same masses set these criminals on the pedestals in the next generation and worship them, more or less. The first category is always the man of the present. The second, the men of the future. The first preserve the word and people it. The second move the word and lead it to its goal. Each class has an equal right to exist. In fact, all have equal rights with me. And Viva la Joana and Troy till the New Jerusalem, of course. Then you believe in the New Jerusalem, do you? I do, Raskolnikov answered firmly. As he said, these words are during the whole preceding triads. He kept his eyes on one spot on the carpet and do you believe in God? Excuse my curiosity. I do, repeated Raskolnikov, raising his eyes to Porphyry. And do you believe in Lazarus raising from the dead? I do. Why do you ask all this? You believe it literally, literally. You don't say so. I asked from curiosity. Excuse me. But let us go back to to the question. They are not always executed. Some, on the contrary, triumph in their lifetime. Oh yes, some attain their ends in the life, and then they begin executing other people. If it is necessary indeed for the most part they do. Your remark is very pretty. Thank you. But tell me this, how do you distinguish those extraordinary people from the ordinary ones? Are there signs at their birth? I feel they ought to be more exactitude, more extended definition. Excuse the natural anxiety of a particular law abiding citizen. But could not they adopt a special uniform, for instance? Could not they wear something, be branded in some way? For you for if confusion arises and a member of one category imagines that he belongs to the other, begins to eliminate obstacles, as you so happily expressed it then. Oh, that very often happens. That remark is wittier than the other. Thank you. No reason to. But take note that the mistake can only arise in the first category, that is, among the ordinary people, and as I perhaps unfortunately called them, in spite of their predisposition to obedience, very many of them, through a playfulness of nature, sometimes wash, wash saved even to the cow, like to imagine themselves advanced people, destroyers, and to push themselves into the new movement, and this quite sincerely. Meanwhile, really new people are very often unobserved by them, or even despised as reactionaries of groveling tendencies. But I don't think there is any considerable danger here, and you really need not be uneasy, for they never go very far. Of course, they might have a thrashing sometimes for letting their fancy run away with them and to teach them their place, but no more. In fact, even this isn't necessary as they castigate themselves, for they are very conscientious. Some perform this service for one another, and others castrate themselves with their own hands. They will impose various public acts of penitence upon themselves with a beautiful and edifying effect. In fact, you have nothing to be uneasy about. It's a law of nature. Well, you have certainly Well, you have certainly set my mind more at rest on that score. But there is another thing worries me. Tell me, please, are there many people who have the right to kill others? These extraordinary people. I am ready to bow down to them, of course, but you must admit it's alarming if there are a great many of them. Oh, you need not worry about that either. Raskolnikov went on in the same tone. People with new ideas, people with the faintest capacities for seeing something new, are extremely few in number. Extraordinary, so in fact. One thing only is clear that the appearance of all these grades and subdivisions of men must follow with unfailing regularity some law of nature. That law, of course, is known at present, but I am convinced that it exists and one day may become known. The vast mass of mankind is mere material and only exists in order by some great effort, by some mysterious process, by means of some crossing of race and stocks, to bring into the world at last perhaps one man out of 1,000 with a spark of independence. One in 10,000 perhaps, I speak roughly approximately, is born with some independence, and with still greater independence, one in 100,000. The man of genius is one of millions, and the great geniuses, the crown of humanity, appear on earth perhaps one in many thousand millions. In fact, I have not peeped into the retort in which all this takes place, but there certainly is and must be a definite law. It cannot be matter of chance. Why are you both joking? Razumon cried at last. There you sit, making fun of one another. Are you serious? Raskolnikov raised his pale and almost mournful face and made no reply, and the unconcealed, persistent, nervous, and discourteous sarcasm of Porphyry seemed strange to Razumoin, besides that quiet and mournful face. Well, brother, if you are really serious, you are right, of course, in saying that it's not new, that it's like what we have read and heard 1,000 times already. But what is really original in all this and is exclusively your own, to my horror, is that you sanction bloodshed in the name of conscience and excuse my saying so for such fantasism. That I take it is the point of your article, but that sanction of bloodshed, my conscience is to my mind more terrible than the official legal sanction of bloodshed. You are quite right. It is more terrible. Porphyry agreed. Yes, you must be exaggerated. There is some mistake. I shall read it. You can't think that. I shall read it. All that is not in the article. There is only a hint of it, said Raskolnikov. Yes, yes. Porphyry could not sit still. Your attitude to crime is pretty clear to me now. But excuse me for my impertinence. I am really ashamed to be worrying you like that. You see, you have removed my anxiety as to the two grades getting this. But there are various practical possibilities that make me uneasy. What if some man, what if some man or youth imagines that he is a Lycurgus or Mohammed, a future one, of course, And suppose he begins to remove all obstacles. He has some great enterprises before him and needs money for it and tries to get it. Do you see? Zemitov gave a sudden guffaw in his corner. Raskolnikov did not even raise his eyes to him. I must admit, he went on calmly, that such cases certainly must arise. The vain and foolish are particularly apt to fall into that snare, young people especially. Yes, you see. Well then, what then? Raskolnikov smiled in reply. Trust me, that it's not my fault. So it is, and so it always will be. He said just now. He nodded at Razumohin that I sanctioned bloodshed. Society is too well protected by prison, banishment, criminal investigators, penal servitude. There is no need to be uneasy. You have but to catch the thief. And what if we do catch him? Then he gets what he deserves. You are certainly logical, but his what of his consciousness? Why do you care about it? Simply for humanity. If he has a consciousness, he will suffer for this mistake. That will be his punishment as well as the prison. But the real genius, asked Razumohin, frowning, those who have the right to murder, ought not they to suffer at all even for the blood they have shed? Why the word ought? It is not why the word ought. It is not a matter of permission or prohibition. He will suffer if he is sorry for his victim. Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. The really great man must, I think, have great sadness on earth, he added dreamily, not in the tone of the conversation. He raised his eyes, looked earnestly, and then all smiled and took his cap. He was too quiet by comparison with his manner at his entrance, and he felt this. Everyone caught up. Well, you may abuse me, be angry with me if you like. Boyfully, Petrovich began again. But I can't resist. Allow me one little question. I know I am troubling you. There is just one little notion I want to express, simply that I may not forget it. Very good. Tell me your little notion. Raskolnikov stood waiting, pale and grave, before him. Well, you see, I really don't know how to express it properly. It's playful, psychological idea. When you are writing your article, surely you could not help, he fancying yourself just a little an extraordinary man uttering a new word in new sense. That's so, isn't it? Quite possibly, Raskolnikov answered contemptuously. Razumov made a movement. And if so, could you bring yourself in case of worldly difficulties and hardship, or for some service to humanity, to overstep obstacle, for instance, to rob and murder? And again he winked with his left eye and laughed noiselessly, just as before. If I did, I certainly should not tell you, Raskolnikov answered with defiant and haughty contempt. No, I was only interested on account of your article, from the literary point of view. For how obvious and insolent that is. Raskolnikov thought in repulsion. Allow me to observe, he answered dryly, that I don't consider myself a Mahmoud or a Napoleon or any personage of that kind, and not being one of them, I cannot tell you how I could act. Oh, come, don't we all think ourselves Napoleon now in Russia? Porfiry Petrovich said with alarming familiarity. Something peculiar betrayed itself in the very intonations of his voice. Perhaps it was one of these future Napoleons who did for Alena Ivanova last week. Zametov blurted out from the corner. Raskolnikov did not speak, but looked firmly and intently at Porfiry. Razumin was scowling gloomily. He seemed before this to be noticing something. He looked angrily around. There was a minute of gloomy silence. Raskolnikov turned to go. Are you going already? Porfiry said immediately, holding out his hand with excessive politeness. Very, very glad of your acquaintance. As for your request, have no uneasiness. Write just as I told you, or better still, come to me there yourself in a day or two. Tomorrow, indeed. I shall be there at even 11 o'clock for certain. We will arrange it all. We will all have a talk. As one of the last to be there, you might perhaps be able to tell us something, he added with a most good natured expression. You want me to cross examine me officially in due form? Raskolnikov asked sharply. Oh, why? That's not necessary for the best. You misunderstand me. I lose no opportunity, you see, and I have talked with all who pledges. I obtained evidence from some of them, and you are the last. Yes, by the way, he cried, seemingly sudden delighted. I just remember what was I thinking of. He turned to Rasamon. You were talking my ears off about Nikolai. Of course, I know very well. He turned to Raskolnikov. That the fellow is innocent. But what is one to do? We had to trouble Dmitri too. This is the point.